Hello there, welcome back to Nerd World Empire, and this on the final major ship utilised by the Xindi, specifically by the Xindi faction known as the Reptilians. Please like, share, subscribe and comment to help this channel grow, and let me know what you thought of the Xindi arc. As I've said in previous videos, it has kind of mixed feelings and mixed views by many of the fans. I personally quite like Season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. It was unique and it was better storytelling than some Star Trek had come before it, having one prolonged arc, something that was established in Deep Space Nine but really expanded upon in Enterprise. In the mid-22nd century, this vessel was developed. It's one of the few ships on this list I can actually say was definitely actually developed in the mid-22nd century and wasn't just an older design. Also, unlike some of the other vessels, it had a better classification. This was a true warship. Unlike the insectoid vessel, it was a type of escort vessel and was relatively smaller and was a bit of a specialist ship. This was a bit more of a generalist warship. It was at least as big as a primate vessel, making it almost as big as an NX-class starship, but it had less internal volume. It had about 7 decks, maybe. It could have had more, but it had at least 7. The vessel was crewed by a relatively light crew of between 20 and 30 personnel. Reptilians, similar to Cardassians, also like things hot, and located in the key areas of the ship were heated areas, sort of reptilian tanning salons, and we're going to call them that because that's what they were. And they were sort of located on the ship, and they were thermal chambers to help the reptilians relax and unwind from a hard day of murdering humans. It was an important area and function of the vessel. The Starship was capable of travel through vortex, but once again we don't know if it actually had warp capability. It was armed with particle beam weapons and torpedoes, unlike many other Xindi ships. It was extremely maneuverable and remarkably robust as a starship, despite having a lot of sort of what looked like rather fragile attachments on the hull, giving it this sort of whiskery, wispy-like design. This is reminiscent in Xindi armor as well, worn by the Reptilians that also have a lot of these sort of attachments. This may have been something culturally, aesthetically important to the Reptilians, if not functional. It should also be noted that, again, like the insectoid vessels that have this sort of protruding spines and pincers from the vessel, which may, as I discussed in my video on the insectoid ship, have had something to do with the vessel's main navigation or propulsion systems. It's possible these sort of Guiblies on the Reptilian ship served a similar function. They may have been a similar basal technology, but were not armored and kept away from the main body of the ship, and maybe perhaps away from danger. The vessels were very maneuverable, and the Reptilians seemingly had a great many of them. They lacked transporter capabilities, but these vessels were well armed, well armored, fast, and maneuverable. It's not known if they were capable of atmospheric entry and water penetration, as some Xindi vessels were. It's also noted that although these ships were amongst the most powerful combat vessels controlled by the Xindi, they were no match for the aquatic scout ship. And that's saying something about the differential in technology and structural techniques used by these two differing members of the same species. The aquatic vessel is simply much more sturdy. That ship, by the way, is coming next. These vessels participated in every major engagement undertaken by the Xindi against humanity and against other Xindi throughout the Delphic Expanse, including the Battle of Azadi Prime and the battle to defend the sphere while it was being launched to attack Earth. Although many were destroyed during this engagement, and several of these ships were destroyed in one-on-one engagements with the NX-01. Although powerful and warships, as was said before, Starfleet built its ships to be equipped to defend themselves, and the Enterprise could defend itself. And although the Enterprise was not a warship, it was able to defeat it. And the Xindi, although they seemingly have a technological edge over humanity, Starfleet was still able at least to go toe-to-toe with them and win. These vessels have a few sort of appendices to note about them. One is that they had sensor encoders. Basically, these ships encrypted all information, a bit like how the Ferengi automatically encrypt every transmission. The Xindi Reptilians encrypt all saved data aboard their ships. Only their own sort of Enigma machine can decipher their coding and make it easy for other Reptilians or the Xindi to work out what had happened to the destroyed ship from its black box. Another thing, going back to my earlier point where I know these ships were developed in the 22nd century, is they were partially designed by the Xindi primate scientist known as Degra, who actually helped design their power grid. It's not known if he was the chief designer, as he only mentioned that he helped with the power grid. So, although we know he helped with it, we don't know if he designed it overall. That does still leave the door open that it may have been simply a refit or modification to an older design to bring it more up to date. Again, using the Constitution class as an example, you had the Constitution class NCC 1701, and then you had the Constitution class NCC 01A, which was a refitted, updated version of its predecessor. And you had the same thing happen to other Constitution class, and more Constitution class ships built to the new sort of updated technology. It's possible that was what was happening with the Reptilian ship, but I think it's more likely that they were an original built. The Reptilians don't seem like the type to sort of be sentimental and think, well, that ship served us well, let's just refit it and keep them in service. But what do you think? That is the Reptilian warship, the principal combat vessel widely employed by the Xindi to defend their interests over a wider area of space. These ships often worked in close conjunction with the insectoids, but I always felt, me personally, that the Reptilian warships were the ones that really stamped power projection on behalf of the Xindi, more so than the insectoid ships managed to do.
I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.